sort of casualties do you anticipate, sir?
Say 5% killed by our own barrage. It's a very generous allowance. 10% more in getting through no man's land, and 20% more getting through the wire. That leaves 65%, with the worst part of the job over. Let's say another 25% in actually taking the anthill. We're still left with a force more than adequate to hold it.
General, you're saying that more than half my men will be killed.
Yes, it's a terrible price to pay, Colonel. But we will have the anthill.
Paths of Glory is a film for our time, and for, I think, every time since the Industrial Revolution. It is about that point at which human beings become worth less, not more. And we may feel in this sort of postmodern age that some of us are worth more and that there are extraordinary opportunities in life, but the truth is labor is worth less. Automation is taking over. We don't have to be the actual soldiers to understand what it's saying about the actual value of human beings. It's a film about war, and it'll be true for war, but it's also a film about peace and about politics and about how money and power route themselves or fail to in our society. And we feel that when we're constricted in the lives of these French soldiers who are randomly being abused by this institution that has this ostensibly larger goal than them, to win this war. We feel that intensely, and we feel the indignity of it, and we feel the unfairness of it. And Kubrick made a film that gets to the heart of that. I was a newspaperman for the first career I had in life, and I was coming at it in the wake of the Vietnam War, in the wake of Watergate, so a lot of fundamental American institutions were being challenged, and rightly so. There had been an excessive corruption, there had been an excessive hubris. So I was coming in to journalism as a newspaperman who was intensely aware of how an unpoliced institution, unpoliced by public opinion, unpoliced by a public's right to know all the facts, how an institution could go at great variance to their claimed mission. These institutions exist because we need them, because they approximate human goals that we have to have. Certain labors have to get done in our society. It's how they exist and on what terms and what individual recourse there is that determines whether or not you're living in a republic or a tyranny, or whether or not there's regard for human rights or not. I was in the Baltimore Homicide Unit as an observer to write a book in 1988. And on midnight shifts, one of the sergeants would bring in a VHS player, and he would play movies for his squad, because you're on midnight if you didn't catch a murder. And he showed Paths of Glory.
Well, I've seen much more formidable objectives. Much, much worse.
So I'm watching it with these detectives who are very much part of a bureaucracy, a very large, at points dysfunctional, but also functional institution that had a clear-cut role of preventing crime and investigating crime in the city of Baltimore.
I'd like a word.
Certainly, sir.
Let's be sensible about this.
Sensible, sir?
They started joking about who was who, which French general approximated which deputy commissioner in the Baltimore department.
Colonel Goulart seems to think you're funny. I don't. I want you to drop this affair.
I beg your pardon, sir. Is that an order?
And a little part of me went, that is a little like Ronnie Mullen. That is how Mullen, would behave, and that is a little like Harwood Burritt, and we all knew the people we were talking about. It stuck in my mind that wherever you go, there you are. If you took what Kubrick had accomplished and what Humphrey Cobb was writing about in the novel, and you applied it across society almost at any given point where there's a large institution and it's being run without oversight or without sufficient oversight, this is what you get. This is what you get. You usually get an institution that is self-preserving and self-sustaining, where the people at higher ranks maneuver for greater reward than the people lower in the pyramid. And what you clearly see from the first scene, when French generals played by Adolphe Menjou and George Macready, brilliantly played, maneuvering through personal ambition, right past the most basic concern about whether or not they're trading lives for actual value.
George, I'm responsible for the lives of 8,000 men. What is my ambition against that?
By the time that scene concludes, it's clear that Macready's general is willing to trade on the lives of all of his men for even the possibility of a promotion. And it's clear that Manjou's chief of staff knows this when he's making the offer.
The life of one of those soldiers means more to me than all the stars and decorations and honors in France.
So, you think this attack is absolutely beyond the ability of your men at this time?
I didn't say that, George.
Of course, this was based on a true story, the Corporals of Souain, in 1960, in which the French army executed 4 corporals as an example to the others, in the same way that the Romans decimated legions when they failed to accomplish an objective. Cobb's novel, which I read after seeing the film, is really quite good. I think it's one of the best pieces of fiction to come out of the First World War, and that's saying a lot. I mean, I think in some ways it is less romantic, more direct, more unrelenting, certainly than All Quiet and Johnny Got His Gun. Humphrey Cobb was determined to rip the heroism out of war. He was, I think, in that way, much more aggressive and much more clear-eyed about what his mission was when he was writing, what he truly believed was an anti-war novel. He thought every time you set out to make an anti-war film, it ends up being a war film. I'm not sure he's wrong. I mean, there's very few films that actually manage to stay within the pocket of souring you on war. The suffering is so heroic. The characters are so vibrant. And let's say, when you're living life at the end of a spear, everything matters so intensely. It's so dramatic. All the Marines I knew from doing Generation Kill, they all love to do the dialogue from Full Metal Jacket. There's something about the camaraderie of war that undercuts every anti-war message. And not this film.
Get these men out of here!
Not Paths of Glory, and maybe because it's not strictly an anti-war film, it's an anti-authority film.
Come on! Give it another try!
And in fact, the film is more complex in some ways than Cobb's novel. The machinations between the French generals, between Manjou's character and Macready's character, that's all Kubrick.
I'll settle for this. Have the company commanders select 1 man from each company in the first wave. 3 in all.
Well, that's very reasonable of you, Paul.
The court-martial will meet at the chateau at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Will that be convenient for you, General?
Oh, I won't be there, Paul.
You won't be there?
No, I think it best that you handle this matter on your own.
So, I mean, you're looking at a filmmaker who really has his craft together, who's built the politics, the modern politics, atop Cobb's novel, and it's what makes the film even better than the novel.
Sir, in my case, Captain Renoir had the sergeant draw lots. I was picked purely by chance.
You're lucky. Look at me. I was just picked because Captain Sancy said I was a social undesirable. Me, a social undesirable. Colonel.
I didn't act like a coward. Picking by lots,
Neither
so
did
is
I,
that
Major,
fair?
when you're not
Gentlemen.
Gentlemen. You've all got to understand that the reason you were picked is immaterial. Whatever the reason, you're on trial for your lives.
This is really a movie about chain of command. And there's a chain of command in civilian life, and there's a chain of command in every institution. There's a chain of command in politics. I don't think you get much by looking at the top. If you follow a president, you get aspects that are presidential. If you follow a king, you get royalty. In this case, you have a colonel who is middle management.
Gentlemen of the court, there are times when I'm ashamed to be a member of the human race, and this is one such occasion.
With middle management as your point of view, you can look up and you can look down. And therein lies a political crux that, he's able to tell a story about how power routes itself all the way down from the top to the individual.
The case made against these men is a mockery of all human justice. Gentlemen of the court, to find these men guilty would be a crime. To haunt each of you to the day you die.
With everything I've done, my heart is really with either middle management or labor. But I'm always attending to how power routes itself through systems. And so I took that to heart. I was trying to structure a television show on HBO called The Wire. I remember rewatching it, with a notepad in front of me and saying, how did he do this? And, what are the elements here that I'm trying to capture? It's good to split the POV, as the plotting in this thing demonstrates that it carries a lot of narrative threads and does so with a minimum of waste. I mean, every time we did two bureaucratic figures who were seemingly in cahoots but also had slightly varying agendas, certainly, Burrell and Rawls are sort of weird cousins to Manjou and Macready. The two editors in season 5 at the newspaper in Baltimore, all the characters are made human in the briefest span of time possible.
He must be dead. Where is he?
You have the lieutenant who sends one of the men to their death as an act of self-protection.
Roger.
And there's that amazing moment at the end where he tries to apologize while handing him the blindfold. And the look on Meeker's face, it's a moment of brilliant acting, because it's not like there's a retributive moment. It's like, I'm at the point of death. The apology, never mind. That's not important right now. What's important is this.
Do you want a blindfold? I'm sorry.
Life is often anti-drama. And here's this incredibly dramatic moment of a firing squad. What could be more dramatic? And so Kubrick restrained himself. Like, he didn't go for it. He's like, no, I don't want to see you guys come to any terms with this. Kirk Douglas is Dax. Boy, he doesn't win anything. He's one of the most ineffective heroes. I mean, the only thing he's able to deliver is a few more minutes to the men, before they're called back in the line. Give them a few more minutes. What else would you say to people who have been that diminished by authority? He gives the film even more resonance at the end. Because we're the French soldiers, by and large. We're the ones who have less and less agency, less and less authority over our lives. We're all sitting in that bar feeling bad for the girl we've made to sing the song.
Und als man ihm die Botschaft bracht, dass sein Herzliebchen im Sterben lag.
Kubrick made a film in which those human beings have been told just how marginal they are to the goals of the people above them. And it puts your heart in your throat. The film never stops being amazing to me.
Sir?
Yes, sir.
I want us to move back to the front immediately.
I'll give the men a few minutes more, Sergeant.